Here's a man who knows how to speak his mind. Alexander Nekrassov, frequent guest on my show, Mike Graham, and many, many other shows here on Talk Radio. Because you need to be able to walk a mile in the other person's shoes. And he's a Russian. So let's hear what it feels like to be a Russian on the brink of what might become Armageddon itself, and on the receiving end of the Skripal-Salisbury affair. Alexander, welcome to the show.
George, hi, how are you?
I'm good. Now, let's start, if we may, with the Skripal affair, because that only killed 3 sentient beings, a cat and 2 guinea pigs. Mercifully, it didn't kill anyone else. The Syria war might kill, well, all of us. So let's start with the Skripal affair first. What's your take on the OPCW report today?
Well, I found it very bizarre that British journalists started to twist this report, trying to claim in a very weird way that Russia is actually not mentioned, but it implies that it is Russia in this report, which it doesn't, by the way. And also, what they completely miss out is that the Porton Down people said it was a Novichok type of agent, meaning it's like saying it's a Kalashnikov type of assault rifle, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really mean anything. And they refused point blank to acknowledge that it is Russian link. Now, this is a very difficult spot for the people who are pushing the Russian connection, because the chemical watchdog basically confirmed what the Porton Down people said, so there is no Russian link. That's the problem they have. So they're now twisting the whole thing, trying to make it look as if, and it's not.
We're going to have to call you back, Alexander, because it's a very bad line. So do stay tuned. Let me read some of the written material while we're getting you back. Thomas says on the email, "Hello, George. You predicted war between the West and Russia would break out on Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night. Wrong on all scores. Whatever you do, don't go into the betting, tipping industry, mate. You'll be bankrupt. Viva Tony Blair and down with Putin," says Thomas from Camden. That's the Camden ward next to Ward 5 at Broadmoor. Chris says, when millions have perished, when our cities lie in ruins, and when poison air, water and food surround us, at least the powers that be can rest on their arrogant laurels and say that they stuck to their principles. Kryptonite says, George, what really makes me sick is that the same people I've seen baying for blood in Syria are the people who would spew their venomous hatred should this country take in refugees as the consequence of our actions there. How very, very pertinent. Let's go back to Alexander. Alexander, we kind of lost you at the point where you were explaining that the OPCW report in no way mentions Russia. And as for British media saying that it implies Russia, what do they mean by that? It draws a pair of boots with snow on them on its cover, or what?
Well, they don't know how to explain this. They have to basically use all sorts of methods to link Russia. The report does not mention Russia. It's a Novichok type of nerve agent that the Porton Down people said, but without the link to Russia. So basically it confirms that they don't know where it was made, and they don't know who was behind it.
Or how it was delivered and where.
Yes, exactly. And I can tell you something, George. Now, if there was some sort of a delivery, some sort of a mysterious people, 1 or 2 persons, I mean, the police would have had some sort of a CCTV footage, or a witness would have seen everything. They've got nothing. And I think that is one of the most weak points in all this legend about the Russian agents or whoever they were coming over and nobody seeing them. I think this whole story is very odd.
Oh, very odd is the very least of it. I'm not leaving this subject. I just want to move on a notch. Yulia told her cousin in a phone call she made to the cousin in Moscow that she was well and about to discharge herself from hospital, that her father was well but sleeping, and that when she discharged herself from hospital, she was coming home. That's what she said in her own voice in a telephone call to her cousin, initiated by her. Now we have her saying, "Nobody speaks for me," except the Metropolitan Police officer who read out her statement, written in Oxford English, in which she, or rather the Metropolitan Police on her behalf, say she doesn't want any further contact with her cousin. She doesn't want the Vienna Convention to be acceded to by the British, and the Russian embassy allowed access to her. And she does not, for the moment, intend to return to Russia. And although we know she has a voice and it's perfectly clear, she's leaving a media interview till sometime in the future. I call that being held incommunicado. What do you call it?
Well, I found this statement very weird. First of all, I agree with you. It was obviously written by other people, and you can actually feel the cops there influencing the text and writing it. And I think that this game is getting out of control. They are not in control of the whole scenario, and this is why I think we will see more and more very weird things happening, because the whole thing is no longer going in the right direction, if you know what I mean, for them.
Yeah.
Now, this woman is obviously kept against her will. I mean, you can see from the statement. And it's a bit, I think it's a disgrace, to be honest with you, to manipulate that poor woman, because she probably doesn't even know everything. She's being told this and this and this, and this is what you're going to say. And I think this is absolutely outrageous.
Well, it's like a spy novel, like one of your spy novels, in fact.
A badly written one.
No,
a badly written one.
More badly written than yours, because they're very good and sold very well. But it really is like a spy novel. Someone falls ill. The government practically declares war against another country over it. Then the person unexpectedly, one might say miraculously, recovers, and that person is then a liability to those who declared the war on the supposed culprit, and therefore cannot, if you think about it, cannot be allowed to speak freely. Because what if she says something so at odds with the British government's state narrative that could bring the government down? I mean, Alexander, I gave a daft example last week. Let me try it on you. What if she comes out and says, "My father wasn't just gambling on the scratch cards. He actually ran up a huge bookies bill. And the bookie said he was going to harm us if we didn't pay. And it looks like he did." Now, that's a very unlikely scenario. But what if she said that or something else that cut against entirely the British government's narrative?
Well, that's the whole point. You see, they're now stuck with this situation where they gave a narrative which might be completely false. And now the problem for them is that whatever she says, and it goes against them, they can't really let her go free. That's the problem. So how they're going to resolve this, I have no idea at all. And I think it might be becoming more and more complicated for them. And I honestly, when you said a spy thriller, I mean, it's so badly written. I really don't understand who on earth was planning all of that stuff, and who on earth was thinking how they could progress. Now, let me give you an example. What prevents, for example, a foreign government taking hostage two foreign nationals and then claiming that they were poisoned and then sending the boys in fancy dress gear who allegedly pick up some traces of whatever substance, and then keeping these two people prisoners and then playing any game you want? I mean, technically, any government can do this now. And there is no proof. You can't see the hostages. You can't see the victims. You can't see what is going on. And this is starting to look very odd. You know, it's like that prisoner. You remember that?
Yes,
TV?
yes.
Well, it's starting to resemble the prisoner.
Well, I think we need to get to the bottom of it. Although I appreciate it could be dangerous, we need to keep on this case because no one else will. No journalist will. Maybe they think it's too dangerous to do so. But the facts as we know them simply don't add up. I don't know if you heard me. I've been looking at the map and the timeline. The last CCTV image is taken and the couple are walking entirely normally, but 75 yards from the park bench on which they were slumped anything but normally. So this agent or poison acted on both of them simultaneously, irrespective of their different age, weight, and state of health, in a distance of 75 yards between the last CCTV in which they're walking normally and the place where they apparently almost died. Now, it is inconceivable that they had been carrying around on their skin for 5.5 hours an agent, a single drop of which could have killed 10 people and more or less instantly. It's inconceivable that this agent was carried around by them for 5.5 hours, walking, driving, drinking in a pub, eating a full restaurant meal, walking normally through the mall after the meal, and then suddenly struck them both down within a distance of 75 yards. So I've come to the conclusion that this poison was not on the door handle. That therefore begs a question I've been asking for 5 weeks here. Was the brave British police officer, D.S. Nick Bailey, was he poisoned at the house or at the park? There are reports of both. Which is true? Both cannot be true. If he was poisoned at the house, and if they were affected by the agent in the mall or on their way to the park, that means there's two sets of poison, and opens up the possibility that the couple themselves, wittingly or unwittingly, presumably unwittingly, were carrying this agent from the house. That if it was on the door handle, they left it on the door handle, unwittingly, no doubt, and that they were then somehow exposed to it in the restaurant, which would explain the restaurant table being burned, or whilst walking from the restaurant through the mall and into the park. So therefore the spy novel, the badly written one, becomes an even more extraordinary tangle. And I can well understand why the state would not want to have to explain that. Don't you?
Well, first of all, the biggest question is this nerve agent, which they claim to be the type of Novichok, which is a very powerful nerve agent, it would have not only killed the Skripals immediately and the policeman, there would have been casualties all around. It just doesn't work like this, like they're making it up. So unfortunately, the whole story collapsed at once. Because if they would have said that this is some sort of an agent which is not that, powerful, which can be administered through this and that, which is not work, it doesn't work at once, and it can be, in the body for a while, then you can understand.
Yeah.
But we are talking about a nerve agent that was developed to kill troops at once. At once. The first contact, you're dead. That's it. So their story collapsed because of that same version of events that they've given themselves. They have boxed themselves in from day one, and then they had to basically unravel this whole thing, and it was always a problem for them because things did not connect. The pattern didn't work. And that's why they are finding themselves in a very difficult situation, and I don't really understand how it will develop further. By the way, when you mentioned this fact that they might have been carrying it themselves, do you know that the same suspicion was about Alexander Litvinenko, that he was suspected of taking part in a smuggling ring of polonium-210, which has been known to be sold on the black market at a very high price. So the suspicion was that he has mishandled a container, and the container leaked, and he got himself poisoned. And then obviously we see the whole situation was played out by Berezovsky and his people. I'm talking about one of the versions.
That's one theory, yeah.
Yes, on the theories, but
it's not the theory the inquiry concluded, of course. They concluded it was probably Russia.
Yes, actually, by the way, there was no decision by the court that specifically said that Russia was involved in it. It was all, again, sort of circumstantial because of the substance. They were saying it could have only been the state and so on. But there was no definite decision, and there was no definite proof of any Russian state involvement. So what we are moving here to this particular instance, once again, we can assume, and you rightly pointed this out, that what if Mr. Skripal had contacts with some very unsavory people? There might be, as you said, bookmakers. There might have been even worse people, some sort of criminal elements and so on. What if it was something to do with a completely different matter? And honestly, what I think was the biggest thing that I felt was not right. Why did they jump the gun on practically the moment it came out? Why didn't they say, let's wait for the investigation? Well, you see, when people do these conclusions like, well, we don't know what it is, but it's highly likely that it is that, right? You immediately think, what is their game? Why are they not waiting for an investigation? Why are they already doing this? And of course, the media, I'm sorry, I'm a journalist. I have trained, hundreds of journalists, and I know how it works. I'm sorry, but the campaign in the media here was so coordinated and organized that I would never buy this idea that it was just, brave, independent journalists writing in exactly the same words about exactly the same situation and not even giving it an idea that, for example, well, it could have been this or that. And nobody even said that. No, this is Russia from day one. It is obvious. And why they were saying that, I found it most remarkable, is because the pattern of Russian behavior points to the fact that this is Russia again. What pattern of Russian behavior? We are talking about so-called oligarchs, criminals and gangsters who came over to Britain with billions and so on, who were bringing their, traditional methods, let's put it this way, with them, and they were sorting out each other. Why is the state involved all the time? How can the state be involved?
Well, look, let me change the subject in the time we've got left. You were an advisor at the Kremlin to Britain's favorite Russian president, President Yeltsin. Russia is perhaps, but perhaps not, about to face a blizzard of US, British, French, and Uncle Tom Cobley and all's cruise missiles hurtled at a country in which you have thousands of military and other personnel. What would you be advising the Russian president to do about it?
It's a very difficult situation. I would be advising to open all channels of communications, sort of behind the scenes ones, and diplomats really need to start doing something. They really need to talk. The problem is they're not talking. I can see they're not talking. There is no understanding at all. All these Security Council meetings, they are just basically, it's just posturing. Nobody does anything. The UN was intended for people to talk behind the scenes. This is not for these public sort of statements where everybody looks at each other, oh, look at me, how I'm talking, and so on. The whole idea of that organization is to have in the back rooms for the diplomats to sit down and hammer out deals. So I would suggest to President Putin at this moment to send envoys at once to all the major players, capitals, and to start talking on the phone as well, to Trump, to May, to Macron, and to others. Well, I mean, the key players, obviously. I'm not talking about everybody. So he has to, Lavrov has to talk. This is the time for talking, and this is a desperate time. This is a troubleshooting time, by the way. I was a troubleshooter because I was asked to deal with situations which were getting out of control and becoming desperate, right? So this is a similar situation. So these troubleshooters need to really, really start talking to each other, trading horses, flexible things like, what are you going to do? Let us suggest this in return for this. What do you think with Assad? Okay, let's look at an option where Assad will go. Okay? I know it sounds drastic. I know you might say, well, Assad, why should Assad go? But look, we need to stop a world war, right? And I would use all the help of everybody in the region, including the Israelis. The Israelis have channels of communications with everyone. So I would go to them and I would say, guys, we need your help. We need to stop this madness because in this war in the region, you are going to suffer as well. Because this will, if hell breaks loose, all of the countries in the region, including Turkey and including Saudis and including Qatar, they might all become targets. This is the time to talk 24/7. There is no time to lose at all. All this posturing in the UN has to be forgotten. Forget the UN. Direct communication. This would be my advice.
Okay, Alexander Nekrassov, former Kremlin advisor to President Yeltsin, former troubleshooter, giving us some idea of how the trouble could be shot.